Did you know in 1518 an entire city danced to death? Imagine a phenomenon so bizarre, so terrifying, that it defies all logic, all reason. A madness that swept through a community, compelling hundreds to dance uncontrollably, relentlessly, until their very last breath. This isn't a dark fairy tale or a forgotten myth. This is history. This is the story of the dancing plague of 1518, a chilling chapter that unfolded in the heart of Strasbourg, France. Step back with us, nearly 5 centuries ago, to a Europe teetering on the edge of monumental change. The early 16th century was a crucible of transformation, but also a cauldron of fear. Religious reformation was brewing, challenging centuries of established order. Political tensions simmered across fragmented states, and for the common people, life was a constant struggle against the elements, against poverty, and most acutely, against hunger. Crop failures were frequent, leading to widespread famine, and with it, disease. Superstition and devout religious belief were deeply intertwined, offering both comfort and dread. The line between divine will and demonic influence was thin, and people lived in a constant state of anxiety, their minds fertile ground for the inexplicable. Strasbourg itself, a bustling free imperial city, was no stranger to hardship. Its citizens were familiar with suffering, with the gnawing fear of the unknown. And it was into this volatile atmosphere, this era of profound unease, that the impossible began. The summer of 1518 was particularly brutal, hot and oppressive, mirroring the tensions in the air. Our story begins in July, with a woman named Frau Trafia. The records simply state that on a sweltering day, she walked into the narrow cobblestone streets of Strasbourg and began to dance. Not a joyful jig, not a celebratory waltz, but a frantic, almost tortured movement. Her limbs thrashed, her feet pounded the ground, her eyes glazed over. She danced alone for hours, then for days, without rest, without food, without water. Initially, passers-by were perplexed, amused even. But as the sun set and rose again, and Frau Trafia continued her relentless performance, confusion gave way to concern, and then to outright alarm. What possessed her? Was it a medical affliction, a divine punishment, a demonic curse? Within a week, this strange affliction proved to be terrifyingly contagious. One by one, then in clusters, others joined Frau Trafia. First, dozens of men and women, then scores. Soon, hundreds were caught in the grip of this inexplicable compulsion. The streets of Strasbourg became a stage for a macabre, involuntary ballet. The air filled with the rhythmic pounding of feet, the gasps of exhaustion, the pleas for release. It was a spectacle of sheer horror as citizens watched their neighbors, their friends, their family members dance themselves towards oblivion. The authorities, doctors, and priests were utterly bewildered. They had never encountered anything like it. Physicians, adhering to the medical understanding of the time, attributed it to hot blood, a natural fever that needed to be bled or danced out. They even constructed stages, provided musicians, and encouraged the dancers, believing that continued exertion might somehow cure them. They thought if the dancers could exhaust the fever, the affliction would cease. Imagine the perverse irony. The very solution proposed only fueled the tragedy, providing an endless soundtrack to their torment. The sight of hundreds of people, some bleeding from their feet, eyes wide with terror and exhaustion, still compelled to move, must have been a vision of hell on earth. The death toll began to rise. Exhaustion, heart attacks, strokes, their bodies simply gave out. Historical accounts speak of up to 15 deaths per day at the height of the plague. The city was in panic, gripped by a collective dread. The dancing wasn't joyful or rhythmic. It was a desperate, unceasing struggle. People collapsed, only to rise again, their bodies jerking to an invisible rhythm. The surrealism of it all, combined with the real and tragic deaths, etched this event deep into the annals of history. What could possibly explain such a terrifying phenomenon? Over the centuries, historians, scientists, and sociologists have grappled with the mystery, proposing several compelling, yet ultimately unproven, theories. One of the most widely accepted explanations is mass hysteria, or as modern psychology refers to it, a psychogenic illness, in a society riddled with stress, fear, and uncertainty. The human mind can sometimes manifest physical symptoms without a clear organic cause. The extreme psychological pressure of the 16th century, famine, disease, religious fervor, and the overarching belief in curses and divine wrath created a perfect storm. Frau Trofia's initial dance could have been a trigger, a single spark igniting a highly susceptible population. The sight of one person dancing uncontrollably might have tapped into a collective subconscious fear, manifesting as an irresistible urge to join. The mind under extreme duress can be a powerful and terrifying conductor. This psychological contagion, fueled by shared anxiety and belief, could have rapidly spread like a wildfire through the community. Another prominent theory points to a biological culprit: ergot poisoning. Ergot is a parasitic fungus that grows on rye and other cereals, especially in damp conditions. When contaminated grain is milled into flour and consumed, it can cause a condition known as ergotism, or St. Anthony's fire. Symptoms include convulsions, spasms, hallucinations, a burning sensation in the limbs, and severe psychological effects like mania and psychosis. The dancing, the frantic movements, the apparent loss of control, all could align with the neurological effects of ergot poisoning. Given the widespread hunger and reliance on rye bread, especially among the poor, and the damp summer conditions, it's a plausible theory. However, ergot poisoning also typically causes gangrene and other more specific physical symptoms that aren't consistently reported in the historical accounts of the dancing plague. And while it could explain some individual cases, its ability to initiate such a widespread, sustained, and specific compulsion to dance remains debated. A third, more historically contextualized theory ties into the deep-seated religious and spiritual beliefs of the time. Many believe the dancers were afflicted by a curse from Saint Vitus, a Christian saint associated with dancing and nervous system disorders. People in the Middle Ages would often pray to Saint Vitus to be spared from such afflictions, sometimes even dancing before his statue. The dancers themselves may have believed they were possessed, either by divine will or demonic forces. This belief system would have reinforced the behavior, making it nearly impossible for the afflicted to stop. If you genuinely believe you are dancing due to a supernatural force, how do you simply choose to stop? The religious leaders and medical authorities try to interpret the events through this lens, contributing to the confusion and, at times, exacerbating the problem by offering solutions that involve more dancing or spiritual rituals. Ultimately, the true cause of the dancing plague of 1518 remains an enigma, a haunting riddle from history. Perhaps it was a combination of these factors, the perfect storm of psychological contagion, underlying physical distress, and deeply ingrained spiritual beliefs. What is clear is the profound impact it had, a tragic testament to the fragility of the human mind and body when pushed to their limits. The story of the dancing plague forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the power of collective psychology, the susceptibility of communities to mass phenomena, and how easily fear and desperation can twist human behavior into something utterly unrecognizable. It reminds us that history is not just a collection of dates and names, but a tapestry woven with the bizarre, the terrifying, and the deeply human. It asks us to look beyond the obvious, to consider the invisible threads of anxiety, belief, and contagion that can bind an entire populace in a dance with death. This strange chapter in human history continues to fascinate and confound, a stark reminder of the mysteries that lie within our own minds and societies. If you're as intrigued by the hidden corners of history as we are, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the past, and let us know in the comments what historical mysteries you'd like us to explore next. Thank you for watching, and stay curious.